Welcome, people of New Bedford Guide. So we're here with New Bedford's Mayor Jon Mitchell. We're here to talk about a few issues. One of the big issues we want to talk about is the judges in the city of New Bedford. As you saw the lead in to this episode, we put in the quote that the mayor had come out, and I'll read it real quick. So the continued practice of district court judges releasing violent defendants on limited bail is deeply troubling. It has compromised the safety of our city, negated the hard work of our police officers, and undermined the public's respect for the state judicial system. It underscores the need for the appointment of judges who have more than a passing connection to Greater New Bedford. So welcome, Mayor Jon Mitchell. So that's your quote. That came out when the New Bedford Police put out a report. There was a mugging towards the north end that involved a bunch of people, and most of them were released out, and like half of them have reoffended and been released again and reoffended again. Yeah. And we'll read a topic. So what's your point on that?
The quotation speaks for itself. It's been hugely frustrating. We've made real progress in our police department. We've got a really effective chief. He's made changes in the department that make the police department more active in the neighborhoods that have had some problems. And they're working it really hard. And it's not to say that everybody that gets arrested should be held without bail, but there are some people who have proven track records of being unable to comport their behavior with the requirements of the law, that they need to be held. And just this morning there was a guy yesterday there was a guy who was released who had 39 arrests on his record. He was released, and you got to wonder, well, yeah, I'm sure the guy has a drug issue. I'm sure the guy has not been able to hold down a steady job. Let me just stipulate that that's the case, not without knowing it for sure, but I just assume that's the case. Even still, he obviously can't find a way to to not pose a threat to the community, and so what choice is there but to hold him, to actually get him to understand that his behavior is going to have consequences. And that's the problem here. When these judges continue to let people out again and again and again, it signals to everybody who goes in there, including law-abiding citizens who are paying attention, that bad behavior doesn't have a consequence, and that's really troubling. It's really troubling, as for me as the mayor, for all of us as citizens of the city, to think that people who are committing crimes aren't being accountable, even in the slightest way. I mean, it's not like, look, we can all take positions on how punitive the criminal justice system should be in any given case, but I think we can also agree that for someone who's arrested 39 times, I think that's the kind of person who should be held on bail. I mean, there were lots of other examples. Another example last week was the case where we had a guy who had multiple arrests, including one for murder. He had been convicted of murder 20 years ago, spent 20 years in prison, and then gets out and then continues to be a one-man crime wave. I mean, there's a guy who shouldn't be let out on $1,000 bail, safe to say, but that's exactly what the judge did. So, we've made a big to-do of it. Sometimes when I speak up, it gets dismissed by the judges there as being, the mayor doesn't understand what it's like in state court. All these people have to be moved through, and he's just doing it because he wants to get reelected. No, I'm doing it because I feel like the safety of my community is being put at risk by decisions that are being made by judges in that courthouse.
Yeah, so we put a link on there. We started this Facebook group called New Bedford Judicial Watch. It's a way to potentially get volunteers to go to the courtroom and actually report back to this group and see if we can follow up with some of these judges. You can click the link. We had 500 people sign up in the first 24 hours. You were a former prosecutor. Right.
At the federal level.
At the federal level.
This stuff does not happen at the federal level. People go to jail at the federal level. And that's why it's taken seriously. In New Bedford District Court, the problem is that the bad guys and the rest of the law-abiding public alike are not taking the authority of those judges seriously, because they're not following through on what would otherwise be common sense determinations.
So part of your quote was they have a passing, interest in New Bedford. Most of them don't even really live in the community, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a problem, and I brought that up with the governor, I brought that up with a number of folks in his administration, and it's not just, the current gubernatorial administration. There has been a pattern of appointments of judges sitting here who have been from other parts of the state. And, with one exception, in the case of Kevin Finnerty, who sits in Fall River, usually not in New Bedford. He's the only New Bedford-based judge in the entire region, to my knowledge. So at least in the district court. So that's a problem to me. I mean, you need if in all these bail and sentencing determinations, the judge has to consider the danger that the individual poses to the community. It stands to reason you've got to know a little bit about the community, right? I mean, with any defendant, it's not just a matter of considering that person's particular circumstances. It's also a question of, the connection to the community, the risks that are posed to the community, how this person could be reintegrated into the community if released, and a number of other questions. And if you have no idea if you don't know the first thing about the community itself, I think it's really hard to take those questions seriously.
So I'll pull up, so we got this press release today. This is a man who had 39 arraignments just in New Bedford District Court, not just 39 arraignments, but just in New Bedford Court. So here's the title: New Bedford man freed despite 3 arrests in 13 days. Police arrested Roberto Torres, 44, for the 3rd time in less than 2 weeks, Tuesday after he was found trespassing in the area of Tinkham and North Front Street, where he had been arrested twice before. Torres was charged with trespassing Tuesday morning after he located walking through the yards of both properties, ignoring no trespass signs. So the property at 149 Tinkham Street was closed down by the city after Torres and 7 other people were arrested for robbing a man at the location on February 14th. One of the person was a convicted homicide person who was released as well. The property had been subject to multiple neighborhood complaints and police calls. So this is what we talk about all the time. If you see crime, report it, and then it's frustrating for cops when they actually go make arrests and then see the guy the next day waving at him on the street.
Well, everybody loves the show Law and Order, right? And the intro of that show, the show, as you know, there's a statement about, the criminal justice system is composed of two different pieces. It's, the police, and then it's also what happens in the courtroom. And if they're both not working, then you have a public safety problem. The police can do their job only up to a point. It's left up to the judges actually to mete out a punishment and to make bail determinations that consider the needs of the community, and that's not happening right now.
So here's the date number, the date information. He was released on February 14th, charged without bail by Judge Paul Pino. Torres was arrested again on February 22nd, so just about a week later, trespassing after he broke into residence on 505 North Front Street. He was in fact located in the basement of the house, so it wasn't like he was accused. Then Judge Pino released on the same day, February 22nd, without having to post bail. So twice without bail, Judge Pino, after his rearrest, even though the district attorney office requested that he be held on bail. His 3rd arrest came 5 days later on February 27th, when police witnessed him trespassing in the yard of 149 Tinkham and 505 North Front Street, where he had been arrested previously despite no trespass signs. On Wednesday, so this is again, now you have a new judge, Judge Ovayan, despite requests from the district attorney's office to be held without bail based on his previous arrest. When the judge refused that request, the district attorney's office requested bail be set at $500. The judge refused that request as well and released Torres without bail despite 3 arrests. Now again, this is a person with 39 adult arraignments, and the judge have that right in front of their face.
Yeah.
Just saw a judge release him twice and he reoffended, so we're going to find him probably in a few days at the same place, breaking into the same house again.
It stands to reason. I mean, past his prologue, right? If that's what he does, he's going to continue to do it until, he suffers a consequence for doing it. I mean, why should anybody be surprised if he doesn't break into somewhere else, in the next week or so?
Now, I complain about bail a lot in the Bedford Guide, and people tell me bail's not punishment. Now, to my definition of bail is, if you find someone that is a threat to society, you ditch the bail up, right? So that's why a guy found...
Yeah, there are basically 2 questions with bail, and the bail system in Massachusetts is pretty archaic. It goes back to colonial times. At the federal level, it's a little clearer. But the same two questions are posed with any defendant. One is this person a risk of flight, right? In other words, the person, if you let the person go, even on conditions, is the person going to show up for the trial, right? So that's always a question. And then the other big question is, would the person be a danger to the community if released? And, someone who's been arrested as many times as that gentleman has is probably fails on both of those questions. He probably hasn't shown up for a lot of court appearances, and because he continues to commit crimes, he probably is a danger to the community as well. Certainly the guy who was, the other guy you mentioned, who had, served time for homicide and then has, continued in a life of crime, would qualify as a danger to the community. I'm just saying, call me crazy, but I'm not sure if that guy's let out, then I'm not sure what it takes to convince a judge that a person might actually pose a danger to the community.
Yeah, my first wake-up call to this was when we first started New Bedford Guide, in 2010, 11. A few years later, we first started posting press releases from the state and the local police. A guy who had 7 outstanding warrants, so it's already shown that he's a flight risk.
Yep.
Was arrested. He was found with illegally possessing a .357 Magnum, which is a cop-killing gun,
Yep.
a .22 with 100 rounds of ammunition. He posted out on a Friday. On a Saturday, that man is posting on New Bedford Guide in the comments section. So I asked the district attorney what's going on. He said they asked for like $10,000 bail, and he got out for like $500 or $1,000.
Yeah.
That's the first wake-up call I had with this.
Yeah.
But so everyone out there, join that group. The police are starting to, we're starting to see more and more stuff, because I asked Chief Cadero last week and Lieutenant Rodriguez, the new PIO, this must be frustrating. You can see the frustration of arresting a person and 3 times in a week or 2, and then seeing them on the street again and constantly arresting these people puts their life at risk. Once in a while, one of these criminals might decide, I don't want to go to jail today, and stab a police officer or do something.
Right. So there's definitely that risk. The other problem it poses for the police is if you're a police officer and you've been arresting people and they're just let out immediately, even people who are dangerous. I don't know. It's just normal to feel like it's just not worth the trouble going after and arresting somebody, including somebody who could be armed. Right? Police officers have to make decisions every day about pursuing things, taking a closer look at one thing or another. And, it is very natural for a police officer to say, you know what, that guy's just going to be let out anyway. He's been let out, in this other case, 39 times. It's like, why should I bother? And, we want our police officers to be motivated, but and we encourage them to pursue people who pose a danger to the community, who are committing crimes, but, it doesn't do much for police morale for folks like the ones you've described to just be let out on bail.
And what I see on social media a lot is, why would you testify against someone who is constantly being released on the street and is going to come back and victimize? And I see, you read the police blotter, and intimidating the witness is constantly, in there. So if I report a crime and that guy gets thrown out the next day, I'm going to be a victim. Right.
So there's that problem. I'll throw out another problem, and that's this. When when I was a federal prosecutor, we'd often have, if we had evidence on somebody, we'd often, try to flip that person, right, to testify against somebody else, right? And you see that now in the discussions about the Mueller investigation, who's flipping on whom. The reason you can flip a witness onto other more culpable people is you can only do that effectively if there is a possibility that if the person doesn't flip and testify, that person's actually going to suffer a punishment, right? So it is very hard when you have a courtroom like we have over here at 3rd District Court, where nobody's going to jail. It's very hard to convince a defendant to testify against somebody else in exchange for some kind of leniency when they know that they're probably not going to jail anyway. Why should I take the risk and testify against somebody else? That's a real problem when it comes to solving bigger crimes.
Yeah, and I know you go to the courtrooms, and I've had to deal with it myself. you constantly see people showing up and then being continued, and eventually witnesses stop showing up, and
That's another thing. And so there's yet another problem, right? Why, if you're a witness, why bother showing up? If the case just gets pushed off again and again and again and again, why bother? It's just, the place is broken down over there, it really is. And our police department is working really hard. And the truth of the matter, you and I have discussed this a number of times, there aren't a lot of people committing crimes out there in our city. There's a very small segment of the population that commits a disproportionate amount of crime in this city, and it's true in every city, right? And if the judges aren't dealing with that small cohort of people, then that cohort actually grows, because other more impressionable people say, well, that guy's getting away with it. Why should I worry?
And we all know if you've been arrested, you probably did something 9 times without being arrested. So then you're arrested finally, and they throw you in the street. You're like, well, I'll keep doing it.
It's not. In years past, these kinds of judicial decisions were justified on the ground that our state prisons are, too crowded. There's no room to put people away. That's not the case anymore. The state's even considering closing one of its major prisons because the prison population in the state is actually declining. That's a good thing, but there's room. It's not like there is room at the inn, Mike. It's not like the judges have to consider whether there's a problem with prison overcrowding. That's not a problem in Massachusetts.
Okay, so we'll move on. We got a lot of topics to cover. School shooting in Florida. So obviously a big deal across the country, kids being killed. Is New Bedford's school system changed anything since the shootings, or has anything changed at all?
Well, it's certainly a matter that is of continual focus, and there's more planning, another round of planning that's coming up, and the school committee is going to be taking it up, although in executive session, because you don't want a public discussion about security measures, obviously. Yeah, there's things. I mean, a good example of some more recent measures is, there's a big renovation project that will go on. The next renovation project that will be in our school system will be at the Carter Brooks School in the West End. And, one of the things that we're going to be doing there that's different is they're not just going to replace windows and doors as we have at other schools, but we're actually sort of changing the entryway so that anybody who enters in has to go through the principal's office, and so someone can't just dart into the school without, having some sort of filter, right? So that's, an important measure. We have an armed presence with the school resource officers at the high school and the middle schools, obviously. There's work being done by the police department to have better connections at the elementary schools. And, we've been doing the so-called ALICE training. I can't remember ALICE is an acronym. I can't remember what it stands for exactly, but it's active shooter training that's gone on in the school system. I think that needs to be regularized, and it should be perhaps an annual event. It's not to say it should be done as frequently as fire drills in school, but it does need to be sort of a recurring event, so people in the schools, the teachers and administrators and everybody else is sensitive to the possibility that some deranged person might come in with a gun. Those are the times we live in now, unfortunately. We might not like it, but we've got to deal with that reality. So that's the first round of that training has gone through, and that's something that I think has to be recurring.
So big question across the country, kind of splits the nation. Would you ever be for arming teachers in the high schools? Or?
Yeah, so I haven't heard from any teachers that they think that would be a good idea. In part, I think the reason is that's not really what they signed up for. Schools, when they work really well, are very nurturing environments, and I think there's some teachers who feel that, having either themselves armed or colleagues armed might change that. There's also a risk of, when you have weapons in school, that there's a risk that they might get into the hands of kids unwittingly. There's that issue. I think there are legitimate arguments for it. I'm not dismissing them out of hand. All I'm saying is I think that there are alternatives, including some of the training that we've talked about, changes to the way the entryways work, armed police officers on site as we have in New Bedford.
Can do municipalities have the authority to make that decision, or is that something has to come from the state or federal level? Could a
It
teacher say, "I
varies by
volunteer"?
state. I mean, concealed weapon licenses, firearms licenses vary across the country. I can't tell you exactly how that would work in Massachusetts.
Yeah, because I know they come gun-free zones, even LTCs, unless you're a resource officer, you're not supposed to
Right,
carry, right?
right.
So something I have to look into. So we're gonna take a big thing, I know you're a big part of this, is Itinerant Theater. We're gonna cover a little bit what's going on in March.
Yeah.
And we're gonna end with something that's something with the mayor's office. So March is a big time for this Itinerant Theater.
Yeah.
March 1st, you got comedian Judy Gold, which is, I see her on those funniest videos online. She's a pretty funny lady. And they have these thing called the school time performances. So they have a La Casa on March 6th, which is perfect for grades 4 through 8. There's a free dance bar coming up on March 7th. Stage Door Medium Candace Dalton, which is sold out, so you missed that one. Check out the itinerant.org for tickets because you missed it. And we'll end with this segment in the mayor's movie Wizard of Oz is March 10th on a Saturday. So this is part of the mayor's series. We got 2 coming up.
Yeah.
This is the first one, and we got Casablanca, I think, in April.
Yeah.
So they got that brand new big screen projector, right? So that's working pretty well.
It's working pretty well, yeah. So they've done a number of movies. About a year or so ago, we said, well, what would it take to get some movies down there, right? The Itinerant Theater for a number of years was the State Theater, right? And it used to be a movie theater downtown. It's a place where movies from time to time are shown, but the Z couldn't afford to do much of that because every time they rented a projector, a digital projector, it cost them like $2,000. So we put some public funds behind it. We had free cash. The city council got behind it, and I'm grateful for that. And so now they have a projector they can use to do films whenever they want. We've helped fund the mayor's film series last year, and it's continuing on this year. And we put out a call to people to tell us what they want to see in the way of a classic film. And lots of votes came back, and Casablanca and The Wizard of Oz were the top 2. But it's a good thing. Every time there's Itinerant, it's a neat thing to see. There's certain films, as you know, that are best seen on a big screen, including those 2. And every time the Itinerant fills up, all the downtown restaurants fill up. And so it's a good thing for local business.
Yeah, it's a trickle-down approach. So March 10th, 2 o'clock, it's a Saturday. Take the kids, take the family. You can fit, I think, up to almost 1,400 people in the Z.
Yep.
And free, you can't beat that. So come down there. I think they even provide some popcorn and stuff. Don't hold me to that.
It's on you, Mike.
Yeah, it's on me. We'll build the mayor's office. Right? So today, on the way over to the downtown, I was going by, and there's a fire on 330 North Front Street. We have some video I'll post up. Covered it live. We have a little bit of video. Firemen doing a great job. Do you have any update on the blackout, brownout? I know the combination of down the south end, right? What's the update on that?
Yeah, well, so the acquisition of property to build the new public safety center is before the city council right now, and that's being discussed. I think the city council is going to be acting on that fairly soon. That'll get the new facility built, and at that point, I think we'll be able to do away with the brownouts.
Is that part? So I was covering this. We got a $1 million grant from the governor's office for this HDC Command and Control Center, the police and fire.
From the Seaport Economic Council.
That's a different thing, right?
Yeah.
That's more on the waterfront.
It is, yeah. So I'm actually a member of that board, and we've gotten some money for different purposes to support the maritime economy. So in this latest one, we're going to be building a port security center on Pier 3, right next to the Wharfinger building. And the reason for that is, we're a growing port. We're seeing a huge influx of out-of-state fishing vessels. We had 142 out-of-state fishing vessels in 2017 that landed in New Bedford. That's a 67% increase in 3 years. Offshore wind is coming right after, in the next 3 or 4 months, after the state awards the first offshore wind contract, you're going to start to see more activity on the waterfront in that industry. And the recreational boating is going really well. We have, at the Pope's Island Marina, the first time in many years, a waiting list to get in there. The mooring fields are filled up, more cargo's coming in. If you go down there, I don't know if we have a freighter in today, but lots of freighters are coming in. So it's a busy port that is growing, and we need to make sure that it's safe. And that means that all the law enforcement agencies that have some responsibility in the Port of New Bedford have to have a place where they can coordinate and co-locate, right? And so, you have, when you think about it, we have, the New Bedford Police Department, the Bedford Fire Department, both of them have safety responsibilities out there on the water. Coast Guard, Mass Environmental Police, Mass State Police, Customs. So there's a pretty big law enforcement presence there because it's a pretty big port.
Yeah, I just saw that. I was driving down Acushnet Avenue, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, and they were pulling out the boat, and I asked the police, and there was like a Mayday call out there, so they had to pull the boat into the fire department on Acushnet Avenue and head out that way.
Yeah.
So I guess it's gonna help with that. So big topic, graduation numbers came out, so we'll go over some of this. So in the political group, I have to battle a lot of people and talk about this stuff, okay? So we're gonna go with the numbers and then we're gonna talk about this. So graduation rate, 2010, it was 61.4%. 2016, it was 70.9. So that's right there is almost over a 9%. And the numbers just came out at 72%, okay? So what do you say to people who say you're falsifying the data or the teachers are falsifying data and it states you're kind of working, I mean, this is what I have to battle on social media, so what do you have to say about that?
I don't know what I could say in response to that, Mike. The numbers are what, I don't spend my time trying to, cook the books. The numbers are what they are, and they're reported in the same way that they've been reported for years. There were more kids graduating now. It's good. It's taken a lot of work, and frankly, it doesn't bother me that much when people say that. It does. I feel badly for the folks in the school department who've been working really hard with kids to keep them in school, because they are working really hard with kids, many of whom have come from very difficult situations. Those are the people who deserve the credit, and I can tell you, they are really progressing. That's a figure that I know they're proud of, and everybody should be proud of. It's not to say, by the way, that the work is done, right? 72% is a lot better than it was, but it's still something that needs to be improved on.
Yeah, so the dropout rate has gone from 4.4% to 2.7% over the last 2 years. So the numbers, so there's a 4-year graduation and there's a 5-year
Adjusted, yeah,
What's
there's
the
a 4-year adjusted. I was hoping you wouldn't ask me to define all those terms.
But some of the kids I think they go through like the summer programs and other things, and that's why they fall into this adjusted rate. They still graduate, they just don't graduate the class, is what research I've done into.
Yeah, well, that's the 4-year adjusted rate, and then there's the, there's a
If you stay back a
5-year
year, you
rate.
still graduate, but you don't graduate your class.
Yeah.
So there's the 4-year adjusted, and 5-year.
Yeah.
It's called a cohort, and I looked into as much as I could, and it's basically, we used to lose a lot of the kids that just never graduated, but
Yeah.
now they graduate, just not with their class. So the
Yeah.
numbers do go up, and look at the numbers of the subgroups. African American students at 70%, Hispanic students at increase of 6%. And I think that might have to do with the ESL teachers we added. I know we added something like 22 ESL.
That certainly helps, yeah.
Yeah, so the numbers are up. I challenge people to tell me they're saying, they have, show me some proof, and no one's shown it to me. We discussed this over the last 24 hours in the thing, and someone's saying teachers are too scared, and I say, well, there's a whistleblower program you can call. Get me the proof and we'll look into it, but there is just nothing out there. It is a big thing on some of the social media, so I bring it up to you to discuss it.
Yeah. What can I say? I mean, they're working hard. I think it's right, there were a lot of kids who don't walk with their class, but who still graduate on time. I mean, that's certainly part of it, but, those were a lot of kids who were leaving the school system, and now they're graduating. I mean, the bottom line is these kids they're graduating now, and they're doing it more or less on time, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I posted on the political forum, less popular thing on social media, which is, I think Pia Durkin got railroaded out in a bad way, and I said, hey, the numbers are the numbers. She's done pretty well, whether you agree with her philosophy or what people call her bullying and whatnot. So I'll transition into the,
Well, I don't think she got railroaded out. Look, I mean, she made a decision to leave. I think, there have been.
not by the administration. I just think people with the pitchforks and torches kind of, I think, made her feel a little unwelcome. I don't know what your.
Yeah, so look, the school system, and you've heard this from me before, was in really bad shape a few years ago, and so there had to be some dramatic action taken, and there has been, and sometimes, sometimes change can be very hard, and it has been in the school department. It is, by every account, a better school department than it was before, almost every account. Folks who've looked at it from the outside, from the folks at the state, folks in surrounding school districts, and a lot of the administrators who've been there for a number of years will say, oh yeah, it's clearly a different school department. To get it to the next level, I think there has to be the building of a stronger, more nurturing culture in the school system, where relationships and trust are built. That's really important. That's how the school system's going to be taken to the next level. And I would just ask people, who have kids in the system, give it a chance. It's, don't just sort of look at what's being said on social media or even in other sources and say, oh yeah, it's unsafe, it's this, it's that. And again, I say this in part as a parent, the New Bedford school system is not what it's portrayed to be in the media. It isn't, and I think people need to give it a shot.
So we'll do a few more, and then I'll take some questions online, and we'll wrap up. So we're obviously in the middle of a superintendent search. This is Pia Durkin's last school year as the superintendent. How's that going now, the search? Down to so many, or?
Yeah, so there was a screening committee that the school committee appointed a couple months ago, and they're going about their work right now. The applications have closed. I think they have like 9 or 10 candidates, and they are interviewing those candidates, and they'll report out some number to the school committee, 3 or 4 or so, and I guess they just started their interviews. It's today, Wednesday. I think they started yesterday.
So my hope is Bernadette Coelho in one of the lists? I'd like to see her as she seems to have done very well at the high school.
I can't give you the list of folks. I've seen a couple of names just because people have talked about them, but I'm not privy to all that. But I'm a big Bernadette Coelho fan. I think she's done a lot of really good work, and she's just widely respected and somebody who is very valuable to kids and to the system more generally.
So one of the big topics always in New Bedford is potholes. So we had someone, Deanne Mendoka, say potholes on Braley Road finally being filled, all excited about it. So I know a few years ago we got those machines, it was like 10,000 potholes filled. How is the streets? I know we talked long-term.
It's February, Mike. This is when the potholes come out.
Yeah. So I know you had a long-term, we talked a few months back about it's really a long-term process to fix the roads, but the short-term is you report them and you fill them, and it's a temporary solution for the short.
There's more investment. When the roads hadn't been invested in a long time, and we as a city had been for a while relying only on roughly $2 million in state transportation aid to deal with road reconstruction. We're stretching that money out now through funds that we're getting from Eversource, which is doing these, as we've seen around the city, doing these gas main replacements. We're requiring them to pave things over. Sometimes we're doing half the side of the street because that's actually a more economical way to do it. Sometimes we're doing a full replacement. That's far more actually than they are required to do. So and then we have. Starting last year, we started a city-funded street repair program. We've put $1 million aside, programmed it in our capital budget every year so that we can start to pick up the pace of street replacement. It's going to take a while. We have 300 miles of roads, and loosely speaking, $1 million doesn't even get you a full mile, right? So we have over 300 miles of roads. That's why, you need to have constant investment in the system to keep up. The roads, if they're done the right way, should last, more than 20 years, 20 or 30 years. So, we're catching up, and they have all these sources of funding that we're trying to use in as many places of need as possible. But, we're dealing with the problem. Obviously, it's a problem, lack of investment in the streets. We're investing now, and it's something the city's going to have to stick with over a long period of time.
So we'll take some comments and questions here, kind of more rapid fire approach to these.
Sure.
But so Joel Bletcher says, can we stop with the beautification projects in the city and spend money on fixing the streets and providing more money for the police and fire personnel? Those usually come from grants, right? From states a lot of times, like the Cove Walk and a lot of stuff. Is that kind of a mixture? He's saying, should we stop beautification and focus only on the fire? And
Well, by
streets?
beautification, he probably means, I'm not sure what he means, but if we're paving a road, it should look good. Everything should look good in the city. We're investing in road, as I just explained to you a moment ago, we're investing a good deal in our roadways, and we're gonna continue to do that. In the fire department, we're building the first fire station in over 60 years in the city. And we've invested more in fire apparatus than has been invested in, who knows how long in the city. We're actually caught up almost with new fire apparatuses since I've, in my time in office. So there's been a significant amount of money invested in fire, and the same thing with police and our investments in, a number of things, but including cruisers. So those investments are happening. So, I mean, I get that when people say, don't make things beautiful. I think they don't quite mean that. You need, everything should look nice in the city. It should be neat. It should be orderly. It should be presentable. It should be inviting. So that's how street projects should be done. I'm sure nobody would disagree with that.
So Tony Rosa says, if you consider using a percentage of property owners' property tax to build programs to help property owners get city-funded low-interest loans to help correct property violations, upgrade the city's housing properties. So basically saying, is there a way to use some of the money, because the property owners are actually paying the property taxes, put some of it back into the low-income loans for some of these people?
Well, I'm not sure what exactly he's getting at, but yeah, there was a property owners, if he's talking about fines.
Yeah, he's saying instead of fining them, why not let them borrow some money to upgrade their properties through taxpayer loans? That's what it sounds like he's asking. Low interest loans, 0 to 2% is what he's saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I mean, the city, like other cities, enforces the building code, and that's, we do that so that the housing is safe, so that, because I'm sure he's a responsible landlord, but as we all know, they're not all responsible, Mike. And so for the ones who don't put any money into their properties and violate the basic city codes of, building safety and sanitation, they'd be fined, in any city in America, including here.
So
I'm not sure if I'm answering the guy's question, but I don't think I quite understand it.
So we just had a Comcast survey come out, and we put that out there. Dorian asked if you consider an alternate to Comcast, at least have a competitor, and they're talking about this RCN in Boston. The rumor on the internet is one of the older mayors signed some long-term agreement with Comcast, and there's no competition allowed, but the contract is up soon.
Those are two different things. So, yeah, so those contracts do last a while. I think they may be 10-year contracts. That's the way it generally works with Comcast and other cable providers around the country. But no, there just isn't any competition. Comcast is in effect, a really big monopoly.
They own a lot of the Hollywood studios. People don't know that they own a dozen of the Hollywood
They own
studios.
NBC, they own
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, Comcast is a huge media conglomerate. There are, in some places, there are competitors, but not in our market. Most of those competitors are in major metropolitan areas.
I try to get Fios and not allowed, but you can get it in Mattapoisett, so you can't compete with Comcast.
Can you get it in Mattapoisett?
You can get it outside of New Bedford pretty much, but you can't get in. So you hear a lot of complaint on the internet that cable keeps going up, cost-wise. And on a good note for Comcast, they do fund public access. People don't really
They do,
know that. So that's
yeah.
a big, they do put some
They
money
do,
back in.
it's not the city that funds it.
Yeah, so,
It's not directly.
is there a contract ending soon and way to get competition, or just there's no one?
It's a
who
couple
can-
years out, but it is being negotiated. We've hired an attorney who specializes in those contracts, and so, all those things are being looked at. I personally think that the rates should stay as low as we can possibly get them, but knowing that, because Comcast is the only game in town, we don't have a ton of leverage there.
So we'll go 3 last quick points. So the city residents can now use Bay Coast ITMs to pay utilities, real estate, personal property, and excise tax. That's something new to the city. So people
Yeah,
can-
that's a good thing, yeah.
Yeah, so you can, and it's not just here. I was looking at the press release. You can get it. You can pay outside of the city too,
Yeah.
in all these places. So good thing there
Yeah.
happening. We just had the annual homeless point in time count.
Yeah.
How did that go?
We don't have the final figures yet. We had, declines last year in the number of unsheltered people. I think I'll get the numbers mostly right. We had in the city a little over, roughly 400 homeless, and then of that number, there were roughly 50 unsheltered. There was a slight decline from the previous year. I mean, homeless is a term of art, right? There are some people who are homeless who have a roof over their heads. There are people who are in shelters, and people who are couch surfing, and people who are in other temporary living arrangements. And then you have the people who are out there on the street, 24/7 without any shelter, and that's obviously the most sensitive population. That population is gone down a little bit, but, we're continuing to try to work to get, those folks into services. A lot of them, as you know, have substance abuse issues that make it very difficult for them to get into shelters.
So a lot of people are mentioning, if people want to actually, contact the mayor's office, they just call the mayor's office, they email you, how they get to ask you a question outside of this?
They can just call the number, which is 979-1410. I also have office hours that are posted pretty widely. You guys post my office hours.
Yep, so those are every month, look forward to those, and I know you show up a
Yep.
lot of the community meetings and stuff, go there, ask a question.
Not hard to find.
You're on WSM right
Yeah.
before us, right?
Yeah.
And then if you definitely have a question, a mayor can't meet every single person who
Yeah.
has a comment for you. So this is why we do this every
Yeah.
week, and you do it with WSM, and
Yeah.
you're out there. So thanks for showing up.
Thanks,
and I
Mike.
appreciate the,
That's fun.
the answers.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, so we're going to end the show with just a quick video here. Local pub on Ashley. So Pub T65 just opened up recently
Yeah.
a few months ago. We got a video that we showed up with Henry Bousquet, former city council member.
It's a good place.
Hello, New Bedford Guide, and welcome into Pub 65. My name is Chef Henry Bousquet. I am with Pub 65 these days, and we're here to make a couple items off our new menu. I'm going to start with our vegetarian grain bowl, and then I'm going to roll into a nice signature burger. We have 6 specialty burgers here at the pub. You can come and get it at any point. And I want to tell you about our special a little later on, okay? We're going to start now by heating this pan up here and get a little olive oil in it. Now that's hot, we're going to hit it with some chickpeas. I'm going to introduce the grain. We got some red quinoa, long grain white rice. We got that seasoned, of course, with some herbs and some salt and pepper. Add a little fresh pico de gallo, fire roasted corn, some chunky tomatoes, here we have a little bit of our avocado poblano ranch dressing. I'm gonna add a little bit of that to the inside here. Tortillas are Mexican cheese. It's kind of dry. Sort of got the flavor profile of cheddar. It's nice and salty. And a little fresh micro cilantro, and just a quick drizzle of the avocado poblano, which has a little bit of heat to it. At Pub 65, we buy French fries and potato chips that have no coatings or anything like that. They're all fresh, natural products. And we use a fry litter here, this one fry litter right here that never sees any flour or battered items. So it's a dedicated gluten-free fry litter. Going down on the griddle now, we have our chuck brisket short rib blend burger, which is a nice, fatty, juicy piece of meat. And we'll get a nice brioche roll, buttered and on the grill for toasting. Serve that with some caramelized onions. It is a cranberry with Wensleydale cheese, which is sort of like a soft English cheese that has sun-dried cranberries woven throughout. Once we've heated these caramelized onions up all the way through, I can move my cheese onto there. Put that on. All right, here we go.